Okay, so the name of this book is The United Independent Compensatory System Code, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and our actions for victim of racism, written by Neely Fuller. Inside are my notes. I finished this book today. Um, this book was referenced by a lot of my favorite content creators and people who have been seeking to promote justice. So Neely Fuller Jr. is um a writer, and I would consider him an activist, a person who is working to promote justice and to defeat the system of injustice. So Neely Fuller Jr.'s core theory is that racism is the most dominant form of government in the known world, and he would argue that it's the only form of government, and that in all human areas of activity, including economics, education, labor law, entertainment, politics, religion, sex, and war, these areas are dominated, and that it is the goal of the people who are victims of racism, or should be the goal for the people who are victims of racism, to work in all of those areas to promote justice. So he claims that the people who created this system and those who rule the world um are the most powerful, the smartest people on the planet. He also states that not all people that's in the dominant society or as classified as white are people who practice racism, but the people who do practice it are the smartest and most cunning people alive. And so he states that the people who find themselves being victimized by the system are placed into an inferior position, and as a result, collectively, from what he observed, they do not have a code or enough knowledge and information to replace the unjust system with a system of justice. So one of the things that he talks about is constructive behavior, um what things an individual can do to best promote justice, and how they should go about as an individual solving the problem that exists that affects three-fourths of the planet. And he also states that the people who practice this system believe in anti-justice. They believe in deceit, and they believe in allowing the world to be in a state of chaos in order for them to rule. Now, these theories that he has, he of course makes an argument for why those things exist. Neely Fuller uh was born in a time before integration. He lived during integration. He lived during the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and even currently he is still alive. So he is, I believe, in his 90s. So he has a plethora of experience to back up the way that he views society. And so I wrote down a list of things, and so he breaks everything down into 9 areas. Area 1 being economics, area 2 being education, area 3 being labor, area 4 being law, area 5 being entertainment, area 6 being politics, area 7 being religion, area 8 being sex, and area 9 being war. So in economics, in area 1, he discusses economics, meaning producing, building, repairing, improving, and or cleaning those things that have constructive value and use those things for constructive purposes. He states that when it comes to money, that money is not just the material thing, or as like a dollar or let's say a digital currency. He considers money to be your time and your energy. No matter who you are, your time and your energy is the most valuable thing that you have, and the most valuable thing that you can use to trade. And so he considers everything in relation to your time and energy as being the real currency, right? And so he says that when you use your currency, you should use it by studying, writing, asking questions, and or exchanging views with others about all aspects of how to eliminate injustice, and or how to produce justice in all areas of activity, including economics, education, labor law, entertainment, politics, religion, sex, and war. He discusses eating, sleeping correctly only as necessary, engaging in sexual intercourse no more than twice every 7 days, and using the minimum amount of time and resources in associations with such engagements. And that theory is basically, in summarizing what his theory is, he says that if we spend less time focused on things that's unimportant and more time on things that's constructive, then the people who are victims of injustice would spend and should spend the majority of their time doing things to eliminate injustice. And so he states that basically, and this is me summarizing it, that if each victim of injustice would limit all of his or her activities to no more than the aforementioned, most of his or her problems would be greatly minimized in a very short time period of time. The passage also states that, and it reflects a philosophy or framework aimed at addressing systemic racism and individual well being. It suggests that by focusing on constructive actions such as productive labor, intellectual engagement, and the disciplined approach to personal habits, eating, sleeping, and sexual activity, individuals who experience injustice might find a way to alleviate some of the burdens they face. The approach, he also advocates for a minimalist, purposeful lifestyle in order to conserve energy and resources for more impactful pursuits. So he talks about productivity and constructive engagements. He emphasizes that a lot in the book. Intellectual and social justice. He says that in the book that basically life without justice is actually prolonged non-life, and that as long as injustice exists worldwide, all of the people who are victims of injustice actually do not really live life, because they do not have the freedom to live life, because in all areas such as economics, education, labor law, entertainment, politics, religion, sex, and war, they are actually consistently 24 hours, 365 times a day placed in positions of inferiority. And he states that um everything that the victim should do should be in order to um promote justice and eradicate that situation that those people find themselves in. And he stresses self-discipline and personal well-being, focusing on moderating personal activities like eating and sleeping, which reflects an effort to maintain a balanced lifestyle. The suggestion is to limit sexual activity, emphasize conserving personal energy and resources for more personal, purposeful endeavors, which may be a way of focusing on long term goals rather than short term gratification. And he's not the only one that said these things. People like Napoleon Hill has talked about the power of transmutation, right? So crisis management. And so it's an idea that the person who faces oppression, particularly injustice, might benefit from limiting unnecessary distractions and focusing on what is essential for survival and progress. And he talks about not spending time on non-constructive activities, which would then enable time for personal growth, activism, and collective improvement. Okay. And he talks about incorporating justice in the things that we do for fun, right? And so in the area of education, area 2, which was one of my favorite things, he says this, and this is really powerful. He says that the people who are victimized globally are not actually focusing on learning everything that they should learn and everything that's available to us to learn for the purpose of our empowerment. Most people, we learn things, why? To make money. A person pursues a trade or a skill and education not for the purpose to promote justice, but the purpose to trade that learned skill to trade our time, which is our economics, for money. He talks about not confusing comfort with justice. So he has an example that a person can experience comfort while still being a victim of injustice, and that most times the reason why this situation exists is that our ancestors unfortunately made a choice after being considered prisoners of war to in order to remain alive to side with injustice, right? But he argues that by doing that, that's still a process of uh prolong non-life, right? That as long as injustice exists, that one cannot actually live a quality life, right? And so since the majority of people live a life that's of low quality, that's a victim of the system, we we settle for having a comfortable life within the system, and he argues against that. Okay, which is very heavy, right? And so he says that all people have persons amongst them who have great knowledge and understanding of many, many things. And that the problem that we have is that our people do not consolidate and constructively utilize and efficiently exchange the variety of things that they learn from time to time. That they do not record and store what they learn. They allow what they learn to filter away. They do not pass on constructive information willingly, deliberately, constantly, and efficiently to those who need it most, right? So we have to begin sharing information rapidly. We have to share constructive information, and we have to store it so that it is not lost. And he says the reason that a lot of things that we once knew has now been lost is because of that. Whereas the people who control the world are um are doing the exact opposite. They're focused on building museums. They're focusing on studying the past, studying past civilizations, not just of one's particular genetic origin, but the origin of all humans, learning all things. And because he argues that that knowledge is neutral, and that when we learn knowledge, that we learn truth, and truth is best helped to promote justice, and that all people in the known universe have a right to learn everything about the universe itself. And he says to refers to oneself as a permanent student, that we should view ourselves as permanent students, consistently learning. And he says that um promoting justice, which I've been using a lot, means balance between people. All people should have the truth of any and all things. Use all understanding to promote justice. Study the past to learn about the mistakes that were made in the past, as to not make the same mistakes that were done in the past. And so the core idea is that he's emphasizing that we should all have access to knowledge, and we should use the knowledge that we gain to promote justice, and that we should view oneself as a lifelong learner, right? Continuously asking questions and seeking diverse perspectives from all people, and that all people should be studied and remembered, as it holds valuable lessons about the human mistakes and growth. Area number 3, entertainment, right? Now, entertainment is such a big thing in today's time. You have streamers, basketball, football players, sports, um, games. It's just entertainment is endless, right? Entertainment in itself in the entire world is $1 trillion industry, right? And in this chapter, he says that when possible, avoid all forms of entertainment that requires an individual to be around others, right? When possible, seek to entertain yourself alone and to minimize or eliminate all unnecessary time spent in the company of others for the purpose of entertainment. And he says basically try to avoid using intercourse or sexual play as a means of showing off, and do not do anything for the purpose of showing off as long as injustice exists. Only engage in sexual play for the purpose of three reasons: one, the creation of offspring; two, improvement of communication between two people promoting balance and justice; three, minimizing the amount of time and energy thinking about uh the act. He talks about avoid gloating, boasting, and being happy regarding the injury or the expiration of others. He talks about music and said that listening to music, we should listen to music that allows us to think clearly and avoid listening to noise. And he also talks about when around people in the dominant society, don't act as though you should be the source of entertainment, right? um he talks about avoiding participating in beauty contests, and he says that beauty contests are basically a form of injustice, because he says that the world is so corrupt and people experience such hardships, and that no one is as we should be, right? And as a result of us not being what we should be, no one is actually beautiful. We are aspiring to become beautiful. How could we be beautiful? How could anyone be beautiful in a world that everyone is experiencing injustice, whether directly or indirectly, at every second of the day? So he says that no one is beautiful because of injustice, but we are aspiring to become beautiful by eliminating injustice. Um, and so he talks about minimizing social engagement that basically does not uh promote justice. He talks about limiting being around other people because in his view, we have been we have been victims of so many wrong things, to where when we get around each other, it's likely that we will begin to fight, fuss, and harm each other, because an idle's mind is the devil's playground, as the old people where I'm from used to say. He also talks about sexual behavior and not using the act of procreation as a means for fun, right, or a means of entertainment, because bad things can happen with that, right? He talks about avoid showing off, refrain from gloating, boasting, and also feeling the joy at the harm of others. He talks about music, avoiding exploitative social roles, beauty contests, and not confusing comfort for justice. And he says seek comfort only when it serves the greater role of promoting justice. Okay. And in this one is guidelines he makes to living with a purpose, right? Avoiding distractions or actions driven by vanity or social approval, and focusing on justice and personal growth. Labor. In labor, area number 4, which was a very interesting area, he talks about there is no working class. He says that everyone works, except that some people work more efficiently than others. He said the act of not working, right? He said avoid saying that someone is unemployed or saying that you're unemployed, because everyone has to spend their time and energy doing something. So he doesn't equate employment to a job title. He views time and energy as your actual economy and the things that you do. So everyone is using their time and energy while alive doing something. Some people use their time and energy more efficiently than others. And he argues that the people who rule the world and dominate everyone else use their time and energy more efficiently than everyone else, right? Um, and he talks about constructive behaviors, asking yourself before you start a project, questions about the purpose of the project, what did you hope to achieve from the project, and the idea not to compare others and really think that by making more money or doing a certain job or having a certain job title that you're better than anyone else, because once again we have this system of injustice that affects all of us. So regardless of our job titles, if you're still a victim of injustice, then you are not in a promotion of justice. Area number 5, law. He says that if you can help it, basically, um as long as injustice exists, the only correct thing to do is to promote justice, and it is unjust for anyone to unalive anyone else. And he talks about, once again, do not confuse comfort with justice. He says don't call any place bad, right? Because we live in a world where a person might say, hey, this city is bad, or that city is bad, or that side of town is bad. And he says when we do that, he says we are making a place, and we're identifying a place as if it is a person, when it is the people of a place that make up how we view it, right? um do not promote any law unless their law acts to promote justice. And he's asking the individual to develop a code for an unwavering commitment to justice in the face of injustice, and that should be one's highest priority. In area 6, politics, he considers politics is basically human relationships, right? And how we relate to one another, right? And he says speak and act as if the current reason for existence of people in the known universe is to produce justice, and that everything that people say and do should be for that purpose. Do not speak and or act as if you are doing what you are supposed to be doing, your duty, any period in which you are not promoting justice. And he says the people who are victims of injustice do not have the knowledge collectively to replace the systems of injustice with a system of justice. However, they should still promote justice, right? Even if we don't have it all the way figured out. Religion. He says, do not argue about and or speak against any religion except the practice of injustice. Be willing to explain to others everything that your religion requires you to do and not do. And do not say, uh, at do not say as pertains to and do say everything that pertains to the area of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And he says it is okay to assume that a person who practices a religion may also be willing to practice injustice, because they might say that they are a part of a religion, but they might not consider themselves a part of their religion all of the time. Okay, and wrapping up this book, one thing he's talked about in this book is that marriage. So he said that marriage can only exist in a world where injustice does not exist. And he says that marriage should be deeply aligned with the pursuit of justice. In a world where injustice exists, the notion of being married may seem as incomplete or even contradictory, because marriage, like any other social institution, would need to function in the context of justice and equality. In a world still marred by injustice, to claim to be married to someone could be viewed as an endorsement of systems that may perpetuate inequality or oppression, which I found like that was really interesting. That's kind of a summary of what he was saying when it comes to marriage. So he said that relationships can be mutual, but they cannot be harmonious. And the reason that they could never be harmonious is because injustice exists worldwide. And he said so the fact that two people would spend so much time and energy trying to be together, but they could never have harmony. Why can't they have harmony? Because in the areas of economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, religion, sex, and war, these areas are all dominated by injustice. And then an outside force would then go to destroy their internal relationship. And these areas that exist in the human activity, when these people feel burdensome and they go to try to get justice, they are then left with further injustice. And so he says that a person can attempt to have marriage and a person can attempt to be together, but with an understanding that they would have to lower their standards and is never going to be in harmony. That they might have moments of peace, moments of harmony, moments of bliss, but it's always going to be fleeting because the external world around the two individuals does not promote healthy marriages. He says that it takes more than feelings to have a marriage, that the marriage is supported by the institutions, by having stable employment, having stable education, having stable health care, having a stable society to exist in, a society that reaffirms and helps the commitment that the two people make to each other. And he says that that doesn't exist. That was area 8. In area 9, the final area, he says that avoid giving arm assistance to anything that helps to promote injustice. It is unjust and incorrect to say or do anything that helps to promote injustice. And he says any action, speech, or support that contributes to enables injustice should be avoided, especially if it comes to arm assistance in particular. And it should be never given to causes or entities that perpetuate or promote injustice because it defeats the whole purpose. And he says that um every individual, organization, or society must actively work to prevent the promotion of injustice. And this includes not only refraining from harmful actions, but also rejecting any form of support, be it armed, financial, or otherwise, to systems or actions that perpetuate inequality, violence, and oppression. And the moral imperative is to always be conscious of where your energy, resources, and influence are directed. It is never justifiable to contribute to injustice in any form. And any act or word that serves to perpetuate inequality or harm is inherently wrong. Our responsibility is to use our capabilities to dismantle injustice, not to reinforce it. In this sense, every choice, whether large or small, should be evaluated in light of its impact on justice and the well being of others. I think that this book right here by Neely Fuller Jr. is an excellent book. I think that regardless of your race, your gender, how you identify, I think that this is a book, whether you agree with it or not, would be a page turner. And it is written to promote justice, right? And um from a person who like him, who lived through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, if for this to be his magnum opus, and I think that it is one of the best works that's